Hello there, and welcome to this week's episode of Engineer Your Energy. I'm Caroline Milton, owner of Milton Coaching Collective. I'm in a new location this week. I'm in a different office, and it's interesting how being in a different environment provides new opportunities and new challenges. But this week, I want to talk about a question that I received yesterday when I was leading a training. A professional organization invited me to come in and talk about burnout, and specifically how to recognize when you're in the depths of burnout, which is a question that I get pretty regularly. Is how do I know if I'm burned out? But in our Q&A of this presentation, I had a really excellent question that was raised, and something that I think it's important to talk about. And that was, what do you do if you're burned out and you can't quit your job? Or you're caring for an ailing parent and you can't remove yourself from that situation. And I think this is such an important question because I see this time and time again. I see women posting in my engineering communities, hey, I'm really struggling at work. What should I do? And the go-to response is find a new job. And oftentimes that may be the necessary solution, but we can't always just quit our job, right? It might not make sense. There might be barriers that exist for us to quit that job. And similarly, there are other challenges in life where we can't just walk away. It isn't feasible for us. Or if we can walk away someday, we can't walk away right now. So here's the thing. This is pointing back to the major misconception that most of us carry about stress management, is that when we think about stress management, what we're actually thinking about is stressor management. And there's a difference. You see, stressors are the things that are causing you stress in life. Stress is the physiological response to a stressor. But so often when we think about stress management, we think about overcoming or removing our stressors. And that's just a portion of what's required when we actively tackle stress. So when we focus all of our attention on purely managing our stressors, we're not in fact paying attention and addressing the physiological impacts of stress on our life. So the question, obvious question now here is, okay, so what do we do to tackle stress, regardless of what the stressors in life are? And I have solutions here. I'm not going to go through all of them because I promise you my toolkit is deep and wide. And so let's just talk about some of the basics. Number one, you need to address the hormones of stress, and you need to do it every single day. There's an incredible book called Burnout: Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. Definitely look up that book. It's an incredible read. But in that book, they talk about the importance of the stress cycle. Your stress cycle is a sequence of hormones, just like any other hormone sequence in our body, right? When we have hunger, when we eat, there's a sequence of hormones that satisfies that hunger cycle. Any other hormone cycle that we have in our lives, whether it's our sex hormone cycle, has a beginning input and it has an ending input. Similarly, your stress cycle has a begin input and an end input. So when your stress cycle begins, you experience the release of noradrenaline, adrenaline, and cortisol. That then creates the physiological response in your body to prioritize blood flow, increase heart rate, blood pressure, turn off the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your critical thinking, and turn on the amygdala. That's your fight or flight response, important for survival. We get that. But that stress event concludes with the release of other hormones, also known as neurotransmitters. They're super hormones. Those are your happy hormones, your dopamine, serotonin, those sorts of things. This is important because what your body is looking for in its survival instinct is the input of a perception of safety. Okay, so that's what it's looking for when it's looking for those key hormones. It needs to know, hey, I'm safe here. The stress event has passed. Yet there are so many stressors in our life now that don't necessarily have that final input. So our body is still perceiving threat, threat, threat. And so it's still responding with those physiological impacts. So every day we have to close that stress cycle. That means that every day we need to be seeking out healthy forms of dopamine release and of other happy hormone release within our body. We can do that through laughter. We can do that through physical activity. We can do that through physical intimacy. We can do that through creative expression, positive social interaction. We can do that in a myriad of ways that helps our body close that stress cycle every single day. Furthermore, we need to be sure that we are active in switching our body into that parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. That's our rest and digest branch of the nervous system. This is where we really have to focus when we cannot address the stressor. And when we continuously have the input of stress from that stressor in our life, we have to focus on rest and relaxation. And yet, so many are willing to relinquish sleep, relinquish their nutrition, relinquish time spent in self-care in an effort to try to overcome the stressor. But you cannot overcome the stressor without overcoming the stress. So things like making sure that we're prioritizing sleep, things like spending time deep breathing or in guided or self-guided meditation, in activating that relaxation response through a myriad of different mindfulness techniques. These are things that we have to do every day, again, to address the stress when we cannot tackle the stressor. So I want to know, are you someone that's actively managing their stress, or are you someone that's actively managing their stressors? There's a difference. Drop a comment. Let me know which one you are. And I'd love to hear that component of the conversation. Similarly, at the top of this episode, I mentioned I was giving a training yesterday to an organization. If this topic would be of interest to your organization, please DM me, because I do organizational, institutional trainings on the topic of stress management, burnout, what organizations need to do in order to remediate burnout within their employees, and what we as individuals can do to remediate burnout in our own lives. Again, reach out to me via DM to learn more, or you can visit my website linked below to schedule that consultation for a training. We're booking for March for International Women's Day. So if you are looking for a speaker for that, we're also available then. Thanks for tuning in this week for this week's episode of Engineer Your Energy. Again, I'm Caroline Milton. Until next week, be well.